It's difficult to imagine the Forza Horizon games as a spin-off series of the popular Forza Motorsport racing franchise, given the clear dominance over its track-focused sibling. But wind the clocks back 11 years and 5 entries, and it was the Motorsport series of games that had established itself as Xbox's premier racing experience. The Motorsport games quickly differentiated themselves by offering Gran Turismo levels of simulation paired with more intelligent, reactive and intuitive AI, presented in an accessible and simplified career mode that enabled anyone to jump behind the wheel regardless of how much they knew about cars or racing games. Early on, each new title in the series brought with it a richer, more diverse car list, along with a greater track selection and improvements in fidelity, vehicle simulation, features and game modes. However, what began as a vibrant and innovative alternative to the status quo for track racing games quickly began to stagnate due to complacency, lack of inspiration and interference from parent company Microsoft. Forza Motorsport was the unlikely competitor to the long-established Gran Turismo series on the PlayStation series of consoles. The game featured 233 cars, a 70-hour career mode and the ability to play the entire career mode online. In addition to the career mode, there was also the arcade, multiplayer, time trial and free run modes. In Forza Motorsport 1, players could buy and sell cars, upload ghosts, join car clubs as well as train a drivatar that races in your place for selected events. This was an innovative feature, but as it would take an incredibly long amount of time to fully train a drivatar, it made more sense to simply play the game instead. Forza Motorsport 1 had driver leveling with a regional beginning in either the US, Europe or Asia that expands with progress to the neighbouring regions. It had an easy to understand performance index system that represented a car's performance level for easy comparison against other cars. The game also had an in-depth livery editor, performance and cosmetic car customization, a comprehensive car tuning platform, near visual parity with Gran Turismo 4, hundreds of races, vehicle damage that affects performance, sophisticated AI capable of following its own racing line even when pushed instead of a predetermined path, more aggressive AI in professional races, consistently good physics though not quite as detailed or sophisticated as those found in Gran Turismo 4. The game ran at 480p, 30 frames per second and served as a solid, respectable entry in the series that laid the foundation for what it would later become. Forza Motorsport 2 built on the momentum of FM1 with a 50-hour career mode which increased to 72 hours including additional content. It boasted improved and polished visuals, 300 plus cars before DLC, it ran at 720p 60fps and was a quantum leap in terms of graphical and temporal performance with improved simulation fidelity whereby physics ran at 360fps and there was greater focus on how tyre temperature impacted vehicle handling. However, all of this improved simulation performance means races only take place during the day and in ideal conditions. FM2 introduced a dual experience system with driver level and vehicle affinity. Increasing driver level earns discounts from manufacturers, and as players level up a vehicle they would receive greater discounts on parts which offered greater variety and depth to the vehicle upgrade system. Forza Motorsport 2 left the series in a position of being technically impressive in every aspect of the gaming experience, but the passion that went into recreating the cars and their handling didn't translate into other areas of the game, and it lacked a distinctive style as a result. The passion that the developers put into the series was only present when players looked beneath the somewhat bland menus and overall presentation. Motorsport 3 was the game that broadened Forza's appeal for the first time with increased accessibility and therefore greater bandwidth with its ability to provide a jump-in, arcade-style experience while still catering to hardcore fans. The game had 400 plus cars at launch, upgraded graphics once again with a significant improvement in art style with greater use of colour. FM3 ran at 720p 60fps and featured greater detail to the damage models which feature on every car and also featured an overhauled livery editor. There was also greater ability to create bespoke races and game types with the more detailed custom games options. For the first time, there was a 6-season career mode that changes dynamically based on the cars in the garage as well as previously completed events. Vehicle handling also took a step forward. Put simply, as the driver assists are turned off, greater driving feel is communicated back to the player with each car offering a unique driving experience from the next. It even had real-time tyre deformation when at or approaching the limit of adhesion. FM3 was the first time in the series Forza felt a more authentic representation of driving compared to its main rival, Gran Turismo. It was the most accessible track racer at the time with a full suite of assists including steering and braking assists. The game also boasted developments such as AI affected by the player, whereby applying pressure whilst giving chase would cause them to push wide, spin or miss a braking zone. This led to virtual opponents feeling more human and therefore more realistic. However, the lack of AI difficulty options left the game feeling either too easy or too hard. Overall, Motorsport 3 injected that much needed dose of vibrancy to the series whilst polishing all aspects of the game into a well-rounded and cohesive package. It was a landmark achievement for developer Turn 10 Studios that would serve as the perfect springboard for what would follow in its tracks. Forza Motorsport 4 is the undisputed king of this franchise. Ask anyone that's played most games and they will confirm as much. There were over 500 cars from more than 80 manufacturers at launch, improved visuals achieved through a new lighting engine, car models were overhauled with select models available for the game's Auto Vista mode that allowed a closer look at these special vehicles. Sound effects were also enhanced, offering greater clarity to each element of the aural composition. FM4 took everything great about its predecessor and added additional modes, tracks, cars and features that made it the most complete game in the series to date. The AI were improved once again by removing some of the peak aggression they would exhibit to allow for even closer racing. The career mode was rebranded as the now iconic World Tour, which saw the player flying around the world to race in an eclectic series over several seasons that featured equally interesting and varied cars, fully realising the concept introduced with FM3's career mode. Motorsport 4 also introduced the Rivals mode whereby players could compete against the world leaderboard of lap times or drift scores. Additional work was completed on the simulation side to offer greater variety of track surfaces as well as an improved tyre model which revolutionised the feel of the game. The game offered more consistent handling on turn-in with a greater sensation of when the car was on the edge of grip, particularly under hard cornering. In my opinion, this is the best any Forza game has ever felt to date. Motorsport 4 delivered on the fantasy of having an automotive sandbox in which to play, build, test, socialise and explore. The game is a virtual celebration of global car culture. It was the first game to understand that to the right person, any car can be immeasurably special. From an old hatchback to a brand new hypercar and everything in between, all have value and are offered a seat at the table. FM4 is a high watermark level in the broader racing game landscape that established the benchmark any new challenger would need to surpass. Packed with features and brimming with content, it's unfortunate the series has since been unable to meet this standard it established for itself over a decade ago. Despite another clear but incremental advancement in graphical fidelity, a combination of compromising on breadth of content alongside questionable changes to the then well-established Forza feel, Motorsport 5 left fans feeling little but disappointment for the first time in the series. The cars would feel fairly weighty and responsive up to the limit of grip, at which point they just wanted to understeer with reluctance to rotate or yaw in a manner that was predictable and controllable when driving quickly. The car list dwindled to just 200 cars, far less than half featured in the previous entry, and as a long-time player, I felt that the loss of content directly compromised the quality of the game. Similarly, the track list was reduced to just 14 compared to the 26 of the previous entry. It was the same story for many of Forza's well-loved social features, with car clubs, server browsers, and even the car auction house all axed for this iteration. This was the first time the game achieved true high definition at 1080p running at a rock-solid 60 FPS thanks to the extra horsepower of the Xbox One. Whilst FM5 is a clear lowlight for the series, once the context of its release is considered, it's easier to understand the shortcomings and appreciate what remained. Forza Motorsport 5 had the uneasy task of not just needing to be the premier racing experience for the entire Xbox banner, but also having to serve as the next-gen tech showcase for the then new Xbox One console, whilst trying to follow in the footsteps of the feature-complete titan that was Forza Motorsport 4. Perhaps disappointment was inevitable. Regardless, viewed as a technical basis for the next generation of Forza games, FM5 relaid the foundation for the series going forward and in return offered greater potential for what the series could later become, if only some of that potential could have been realised. Now, I won't sit here and pretend that Forza Motorsport 6 is a bad racing game. In every respect, it's a phenomenal game. It righted the wrongs of FM5 by adding more cars at launch, built to the highest standard of 3D modelling introduced with its predecessor, raising the car list back up to 460 cars at launch and 26 tracks. The visuals offered a very subtle incremental improvement to the style introduced with FM4 and continued in 5, whereby the games began to adopt a more convincing photorealistic presentation, so any improvement is welcome and appreciated. More significantly, the car handling model was updated once more to restore that crisp turn-in and responsive grip feedback established in Forza Motorsport 4. FM6 was the first in the series to introduce night racing as well as rain at specific locations, though these conditions were fixed for the entire duration of the race. Save for a few locations and cars, FM6 effectively brought the series back into parity with the heights of Forza Motorsport 4 in many ways. However, it lacked critical game modes, playground locations, and social features present in FM4, and therefore fell short of that high watermark the franchise established for itself years prior. As great a game as FM6 was, offering a breath of fresh air to longtime fans of the series, it did nothing whatsoever to advance the series over the peak established with Forza Motorsport 4, despite being built for a newer generation of gaming. That being said, it was a return to form in many ways that gave fans hope that perhaps the next entry in the franchise would be the first game to cross that boundary and realise the potential introduced with Forza Motorsport 5. Forza Motorsport 7 really was just more of the same of Forza Motorsport 6, with further refinements made to audio and graphics. While similar criticisms could be levelled at Motorsport 4 when compared to its direct predecessor, FM4 brought a host of new features and innovations to the series. FM7 adds dynamic weather but retains static time of day. This is the main difference between it and Motorsport 6. The game launched with more cars than any other entry at over 700, but many of them were carryovers from the Horizon sister series. The career mode was reorganised into the Forza Drivers Cup, which offered a somewhat familiar but significantly diluted experience to the World Tour mode found in the prior entries. What is truly impressive, however, is the 32 racing environments, 5 of which were new to the series. The issue with FM7 is both familiar and common. There was so much additional content to the game, but none of it felt new. Everything was a polished up, watered down variant of previously innovative aspects of the franchise. What pushed many fans over the edge with this particular game though, was the pay-to-play microtransactions that compromised the progression curve, tilting favour to players willing to drop the additional cash. This was indisputably an all-time low for the franchise. The exception to the plethora of underwhelming content, however, was the drift cockpit camera, introduced almost a year after launch. It featured custom settings that enabled the driver to look into the direction of a slide for the first time, making drifting from inside the car feel more fluid, intuitive and natural. However, once again, core community features such as car clubs and server browsers remained absent from the series, along with the ability to gift cars to friends. All of this served to make FM7 simply yet another game in the franchise, conforming with more of the same rather than innovating with new social and community features or pushing the boundaries of the simulation fidelity, causing the series to stagnate. Whilst I have focused this video on the Motorsport series, the problems are seemingly identical with the Forza Horizon franchise as well. As a player that has followed the series since Forza Motorsport 2, it has been frustrating to watch a series that garnered notoriety by continual innovation and evolution sit back and churn out the same tired experience over and over again. Having literally grown up with the series from a time when I could only imagine what driving would feel like, to having a good first-hand understanding of performance car dynamics, I expected the series to continually take steps forward and represent not just the driving experience, but the broader, more social car culture that surrounds it. There is clearly some awareness of this sentiment of fatigue within the community, as series developer Turn 10 Studios tripled the development time between entries for the incoming reboot of the series, simply titled Forza Motorsport. Whilst what they are saying about this supposed reboot seems encouraging at face value, much of it echoes the overpromising heard before the releases of the last 3 Motorsport games. That said, with the series' focus on renewal and having taken far more time for this incoming entry, I remain hopeful that it will finally be the first game to to take the baton from Forza Motorsport 4 and race headfirst into the future of the franchise. Leave a comment below sharing your experience with the Forza series and what you think it should do to get back on track. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more takes on popular racing series.